Hey folks, Cliff Gray again here. Today I interview John Stallone with Howl for Wildlife. This is an awesome conversation, again political, not necessarily just on Colorado. We talk about subjects that are affecting hunters and fishermen and outdoorsmen across the states in the US, but more importantly, we talk about this whole dynamic of the anti-hunting movement that's going on in the states right now and how we're going to combat it. Also, right here at the beginning of the conversation, we talk about bow fishing. John has a business in that world in Arizona. He does some guiding, but more importantly, he's just a huge fan of it. Let's dive right in. All right, guys, so I wanted to mention that I'm having these custom skinning knives made. These are called Cliff Skinner. I've got a whole bunch of reasons why I've had this knife made the way that it's made. Got a short video on the website. The details are there. Pursuitwithcliff.com. Click in the corner up by shop. You'll see Cliff Skinner. Click that puppy. You'll get all the details. John, we're going to talk a bunch about politics. We're going to talk about how we're going to talk all the stuff that's going on in the hunting world. But my first question for you, man, because I've been watching your Instagram, is fill me in on the bow fishing deal. I'll start by saying that I've never done it before, but it looks fun, man. So what's the story on that?
We gotta get you down. We gotta get you down for that, man. Especially now, if you could, right after you're done, because I know you're stateside, right?
Yeah.
If you're done after you're done bear hunting, the best months are during the spawn here.
Okay.
So pretty much from beginning of March to the end of May is about the best. Right now, it's starting to hit the peak time. You can actually bow fish from the shore, which we did yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Um, um, but it's pretty awesome. I was kind of just my son loves fishing,
Sure.
and I'm not a huge angler.
Yeah.
I like it. I grew up doing it. I lived on Long Island. I used to fish in the bays and shore cast all the time, and
Yeah.
did a bunch of that. And then I moved to Arizona, and for me, I was like, okay, there's no ocean here. I'm not fishing. Like I
Yeah.
didn't really think about going fish. We did a little bit here and there. Of course, I love bow hunting, so
Yeah. Combine the two.
I just combined the two, and the fact that it kind of took place during a time where I wasn't really hunting. I was looking for something to do in the summertime,
Sure.
and we do quite a bit of bow fishing all summer long, although it's not as good as it is right now in the spring.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, me being me, I just went. I don't know if I curse on this, but balls to the wall.
Yeah. No, you're all
Um,
good.
and I I built a boat, and I'm like, I have the guiding service. So we'll start, you know, recouping some of that. But I did it really for my son. He really wanted to. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed boat fishing. I had gone several times, but I went with outfitters or whatever people had
Right.
boats, or I shot from the shore. So I had a bow fishing bow, and I had it all set up, and I just like everything else, just kind of dove
Yeah,
into it
you
head
go,
first.
you go, you go deep. Well, I just
Yeah.
watching on your Instagram, man, because I've got a little boy who's obsessed with fishing, and actually my girls fish quite a bit too, and they like to
Nice.
dive and do stuff with me. But just like hearing the excitement from your kids, I don't think, um, for better or worse, man, people who don't get their kids out in the outdoors, take them fishing or whatever, and they miss out on
Hmm.
seeing that just like intrinsic excitement. I feel bad for people that don't get to experience that because even I see your kids, man, and I can
Yeah.
just tell like, oh, they're so pumped. Like I don't have my kids with me right now. I just got back up here to the States, and it makes me miss my kids and like going out and taking them on little fishing trips and stuff just because like you see that excitement. So that's
Yeah.
awesome, man. It's an amazing how I do the exact same thing, John. There's several things in my life that I've gotten into just because my kids enjoy it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And then it becomes a personal hobby. I love it. But what's the word on it? Like, are you um I'm just curious on this front, and I guess we'll be diving right into the politics of things. But bow fishing, you can only shoot carp, or not carp, but like non-game species, or how does that work?
No. So I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
So in Arizona, um, almost most of the waterways we're allowed to shoot catfish.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know. I don't know if you consider that a game fish or not, but it's an edible fish.
Yeah, sure.
It's a very good fish, actually. So
Right.
we can shoot tilapia, which is it's pretty much all the invasive species
Yeah.
that you can shoot. We shoot gizzard shad. We shoot the carp. There's only one carp that you can't shoot, which they're few and far between, and it's the same. I can't remember the name of it.
Is
But
it
we have
a
a bag limit of one
okay?
for rod and reel too, and I don't remember.
Is it a native? Is like a native carp?
I'm assuming it is.
Hmm.
I don't know enough about it, unfortunately,
But it
but
has a separate. Yeah.
I know we don't have it in the waterways that we go bow fishing for, so I don't worry
Yeah.
about it. Um, but there's certain places where you can shoot other fish. Like I know you could go spear fishing for striped bass,
Right.
and everywhere that I've read in the regulations and everybody that I spoke to that in the game and fish said you could bow fish them.
Okay.
I don't know
Yeah.
because it
It's
reads
like
kind of
it's
it's kind of a
gray
gray area.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
reads kind of funny. The same thing with the white bass. Not 100% sure. We steer clear of them just because I don't want to
Yeah. Yeah. You
deal
don't.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Sure.
yeah, but for the most part, it's carp and gizzard shad. And so in Arizona, if you were to catch a carp on a rod and reel, you're supposed to technically dispatch it. You're not supposed to
Oh. Okay.
catch and release it. You're not supposed to put it back.
Yep.
Um, the you know they it's like anything else. They thought it was like a good idea. Let's put a bunch of carp in there to help keep the waterways clean and so on and so forth. But there's no natural predator for it.
Right.
So, in order to keep checks and balances, the bow fishing's kind of a good way to do that. Although there's not a lot of bow fishing that goes on here.
Right.
Um, I think there's myself and maybe three other outfitters that I know of that
Okay.
do it. That do it like, you know, on a regular basis. And then there's quite a few people that will do it recreationally, but their boats aren't really set up for it. They have some kind of like tournaments here that go like Roosevelt has a big lake that, you know, it's got buffalo carp, it's got grass carp, big, big fish.
Okay.
And they do they do a thing there every year. I haven't gone and done it yet. I haven't gotten to that place where I need to go match my wits against somebody else on it.
Sure.
But
Is it
I think
growing?
we might.
Is the sport, the activity, is it growing quite a bit?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's some awareness that's gotten people didn't know that they can do it here.
Right.
And that it was even good to do. Like like even for myself, I had a really, really hard time. I took my cousin Anthony and his son yesterday and his daughter, and that was the first time they had ever gone.
Okay.
And you shoot a carp and you're like, okay, I'm probably not going to eat this thing because there's so many bones.
Yeah. Yeah.
The flesh is actually really good. The meat is really good, but they're very difficult to cook.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only good way to eat them is to grind them up, like so that the bones don't become they're no. You just eat the bones. You
Oh,
just swallow the
okay.
bones whole. You just grind it up really good, and you turn them into like burger patties,
Okay.
like like fish patties. So like when you shoot one and you're like, man, I'm just like discarding this thing.
Right.
It's crazy though. You'll see the coyotes like in the places where people fish from the shore. You'll see the coyotes just kind of like hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
So
picking up
you
the
start thinking about it.
carcasses.
You're like, oh, okay, the coyotes are going to eat it. You're kind of like finished, or you can bring them back. Or they supposedly make awesome fertilizer.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like this thing in your head. You're like, man, I feel weird shooting things that I'm not. You know, if most of us have that mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We want to kill something that we're going to use, right?
Yeah, I can totally
Um,
relate. In their big fish, see their
yeah,
eyeball moving. Yeah,
yeah,
I totally can relate, man. But
yeah.
John, I mean, like you mentioned tilapia. Like I see tilapia.
Tilapia also.
I see tilapia in the Caribbean where they've been put into golf ponds and stuff, and I'm sure the carp
Mm.
are the same, man. Like I'm totally with you. Like I understand like why you'd feel bad, but people got these things. If they're, I mean, they will they'll just take over a water. I don't know if the carp are the same way, but the tilapia, man, if they're unchecked in areas, it's stunning. Like the whole
Mhm.
ground of the pond will be full of them, like
Yeah.
maggots, you know?
Yeah, and it's just that. It's kind of thinking of the greater good of the holistic view of the ecosystem.
Hmm.
Like it's it's no different than anything else that true conservationists get involved in.
Right.
Um you try to look at the whole system of things. If you affect the system from this end, it's gonna have a reaction on this end. So you got to have all these checks and balances to make the yin and yang work.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yep.
So
And then if
yeah, once
and then if
once you get over that, you're okay with it.
Sure, and then if along the way you figure out ways to utilize them, like you can use them for
Hmm.
fertilizer, maybe periodically try to cook one or whatever. Like I think it's real
Yeah,
similar with a lot of invasives, man. Like John,
yeah.
the iguanas are the exact same.
Oh,
Like
I've done quite a bit of
yeah,
iguana
you've
hunting.
done yeah, it's the same deal. I mean, people bust my balls about, I typically will, if I go hunting for them, I'll take the tails off of them and I cook
Hmm.
and eat the tails. I mean, the vast majority, well, to be honest with you, I've never fed it to somebody who disliked it or found it offensive tasting. Most
Hmm.
people like it, and just like anything, depending on how you cook it. But I typically don't use the rest of the iguana, and
Yeah.
sometimes people will bust my balls about that. And one thing is, I utilize them much more than most people. Most people just
Hmm.
chuck them, but it's the same deal. It's like, man, it's so easy for an outsider to look at it and be like, wow, that's really wasteful, Cliff, or the
Hmm.
guys are stacking up carp in their boat when they're bow fishing, like that seems wasteful. But man, if you actually see these animals in the
Hmm.
ecosystem, like you're like, oh yeah, this is weird. Like when you look up in a tree and there's 35 iguanas that are this big, you're like,
Right.
this is not like a good situation. You know what I mean?
No, no,
but
it's not.
I still get a little bit of exactly what you're talking about, John. Like when I shoot one, I'm like, man, like, because they're such a big animal, they're beautiful in their own way, and
Hmm.
it's a life like everything else. So you all, yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. You still feel kind of, split
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, but it's like again, like we were just saying, just kind of looking at the big picture. It's
Yeah,
like a noxious weed. Okay, a weed can take over a garden or section of land, and it chokes out all the other life.
right.
And so you're like, all right, do I let the weed live and
Sure.
only care about the weed, or with this one weed's probably not a great example because most of us will associate a weed with something that doesn't need to be there, but
Yeah.
a plant that takes over a whole system and then no other plants
Yeah. Yeah.
can
Yeah.
thrive. And that's the same thing with the carp and the iguanas, and the iguanas actually have other issues. Like, I know in South Florida they create a lot of erosion problems because they burrow into the banks and they remove a lot of the vegetation that's right there, and it causes erosion into the canal systems and whatnot. I don't know if that's the
Yeah, it's the
same by
same. It's the same deal. Like anywhere where there's a waterway, like particularly, we hunt them a lot in the Caribbean on like concrete canals. Same deal. Like they raise hell on those canals. And the other thing is the ag that does exist in the Caribbean is really a lot of it's like subsistence isn't the word, but it's small. It's small little
Mhm.
chunks of ag. Guys, people have gardens and stuff, and those things are. I mean, they'll get into my little garden, John, and just wipe it out like in a morning.
Mm.
I mean, it's amazing. Like I'll see them just grab the top of a papaya tree or an avocado tree, like an avocado tree that's grown for like 2 years. It grows pretty fast there because of the humidity and stuff. But say it's like it's like to my waist, two iguanas will wipe it out in a morning. You know,
Yeah.
so they're pretty destructive in that regard. But no, it is interesting. The other thing that's interesting to me about invasives, man, and I'm guessing the fish are the same way, is for most people, it's if you're there and you see them and you see the density of them, it like clicks immediately. Like, okay, this is
Mhm.
obviously a problem because it's almost like gross in a sense. You're like,
Hmm.
okay, there's way too many of these in this spot. Like something,
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting how apparent it is if you're actually there. But
Yeah.
no, all interesting stuff, man. I'm gonna take you up on the bow fishing deal though, because it just looks like it looks like
Definitely.
it looks like fun. Um,
Yeah.
and
It,
well,
it, it, it's a good trip. It's good fun.
yeah, well, dude, I'm always open to these new adventures because I feel like that's one of those things that you finally go do, and then at some point in the middle of doing it, you look at your buddies who are with you, and you're like, why have we not been doing this?
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of hunts and fishing things that I've run into like that over my life. So yeah, dude, we'll have to do it. But John, let's jump into the big game politics.
Hmm.
First, just let people know, your involvement with Howl and if there's any current issues you're working on, so they kind of hear where you're coming from on this.
Sure. I'm the vice president and co-founder of Howl For Wildlife. Um, and well, what Howl For Wildlife does, because not everybody probably knows what we are, who we are, or what we do. Um, Primarily, or where our mainstay is, I guess, is we connect the hunters and anglers with the decision makers on policy that would affect conservation, wildlife management issues, and the ability to hunt and fish. So, what does that mean, really? Basically, if you came to the website um, and you went to our action center, you would see different actions on there. And those actions are usually connected to some type of policy there. And just to give you, for instance, let's say they're coming for iguana hunting in Florida. Okay, there's a group trying to petition that they no longer want iguana hunting in Florida. So that will be in front of either a committee, or it'll be at the commission level, or it'll be at the Senate or the House, something like that. And you come in there and we provide you with information on that topic, the pros and cons, the whys, and so on and so forth. And at the end of it, we uh, you put your email or your phone number, email. Sometimes it asks for an address and your name, and it will send a pre-drafted email from you to the decision makers on that policy. And that pre-drafted email is something that you can edit. You can edit, make it your own, or we have preloaded the system with a couple thousand to 10,000 emails, depending on what type of um, issue that we're working with and how much engagement we think we'll get. And the reason why we do that is so that, one, it's not a form letter, it's not a canned email, it's not, hey, on behalf of Howl For Wildlife. It never
Right.
mentions Howl For Wildlife ever. Uh, on behalf of Howl For Wildlife and our 50,000 members, we oppose this bill, or we're support of this bill, or whatever the case may be, because that type of messaging is not powerful. Um,
Right.
we were given, and I don't remember the exact numbers, so I'm going to throw you out some arbitrary numbers. We were given numbers at some point where if a person makes a phone call and calls in to speak to his or her legislator on an issue, that legislator will take that phone call and say, "This guy represents 1,000 people."
Okay.
Okay, there's 1,000 people that think just like him.
Yeah.
That same legislator gets an email specifically from that person talking about it. This represents 500 people. Okay, if they get a canned email that says on behalf of blah blah blah, or it's the same repetitive, like he gets the
Sure.
same email from 100 different people,
Right.
that gets viewed as one person or 5 people. So it's
Yeah. Real
drastically
minimal.
different.
Sure. Yep.
Drastically different. So with our system, a lot of the things that we do, we offer the ability for you to have a phone conversation. We offer fax, we offer the email, we offer like different ways to communicate with the decision makers.
Yeah, and some structure, right? Some structure
Right.
to like the
Sure.
points. And like I haven't been on there recently, John, but when I had been on there, I could pull up that and like you say, I can edit it and there may be a point in there, you on a particular topic,
Hmm.
the ones that I saw, it would be like there's multiple points in there that, can be made. If I,
Hmm.
if I don't wholeheartedly agree with one, I can take it out. But the other ones are still like points that make a lot of sense, right? And
Sure.
there's a ton of value in that because sometimes it's just hard to start, right? You can
Right.
look at a topic and it's really apparent as a hunter, fisherman, outdoorsman that it's not good for, what you think is important, but it's sometimes just hard to find, like, just distill it down into, two or three things that actually make sense to a
Hmm.
policymaker, somebody on a commission or
Right.
whatever. I think it's so much more valuable than just rants. Like
Oh yeah,
yeah,
100%.
yeah, a lot of people will send, a senator like a rant and, I think it's, well-meaning, it's
Hmm.
well-meaning, but just from their perspective, when they read that, it's like, "Okay, well, this guy's pissed off. That's all I can get from it." But if you write something that has some, like, points and they see those same points from a lot of different people, a lot of people
Right.
that they represent, I think that's hugely, powerful. It's really
Hmm.
interesting, John, 'cause, I don't know where um you know the start of this for you and it's Charlie, right? You work with,
Yeah.
correct.
Hmm.
So I don't know where you guys got the idea to start this process, but I my guess is that this is not a it's not like an unknown process. A lot of other, groups that represent totally other contingencies, non-hunters or whatever, they use the same type of strategy, right? Or a similar type of strategy.
They do in a way, and I've kind of gotten away from talking about it just because one, I know that the anti-hunting groups follow what we do.
Yeah, sure.
Um, and so and the other flip side of it is I've you know I don't want it, like the proprietary stuff that we do. I don't
Oh
want
yeah.
that being out there. We used to talk about it quite often.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure there's podcasts that have that information on it, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not divulging it. But what kind of brought us to where we are today, or how we came about this, was simply put. Charles called me up one morning and was like, "Hey, they're trying to ban hunting, bear hunting in California," and I proposed that we used change.org because that was what was available to us.
Yeah.
And you know, because I have connections through my podcast and being in the industry for as long as I have, and Charles has connections, and he wrote this beautiful, like, um, action. We'll call it an action at the time,
Yeah.
and we were able to distribute it through our means very quickly, and it got like 30,000 or 25,000, I can't remember now, people to sign on board, and it had a bunch of people um,
Yeah, it
donating
worked.
money, like
Sure.
$18,000 or something like that in 3 days. Um, which none of that money goes to the cause, by the way. When you use change.org, it goes to change.org because change.org is a for-profit
Oh, I
company.
got you.
So I don't know why they're allowed to use the org, to be honest with you. Um, but they're not an organization; they're a company.
I got you.
Um, anyway, so when we won that and we saw the power of that, we're like, we need to start a change.org for hunting and
Right.
fishing, and that's how the wheels. We Charles and I mean, we've been friends for a long time, and we hunt together all the time. So we both had many conversations um, on what we can do, what we should be doing, and this was like um, the aha moment
Sure.
that brought together our separate views into one thing, and we're able to And a lot of what we have today, like from the technology standpoint and how the system works, is actually the brainchild of Charles. Um, so he dove headfirst into it during a time that he had some time to do it
Yeah, yeah,
because of
sure.
COVID and all that stuff.
Yep.
So we, you know, it, we're proud of it. There's a lot of good
Yeah.
stuff that's
And
coming out of
and,
it.
uh, I mean, I think you guys should be proud of it, John, and this was kind of the reason I asked that question is I have never seen anything like it in the hunting world, before. Something
Hmm.
that, one, really gets a lot of momentum, behind it and is an easy system for people to use. But I've seen other groups use a similar tactic, and I noticed that, in the hunting and fishing world, I feel like we've always lagged other groups. And I'm not necessarily talking about anti-hunters. I'm talking about, anybody that's looking for policy change. I think we've
Hmm.
lagged in terms of our ability to just, use, more modern tactics to make policy changes. And I feel like
Hmm.
you guys have done a really good job of kind of modernizing that. I had Dan Gates on about a week ago, and we talked about that quite a bit. I feel like, and um it's not I'm not trying to say anything negative about the conservation groups like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, their
Hmm.
Sheep Foundation, all of these different groups. I don't think it has really been, their mandate or their focus
No.
to shift like policy stuff. So you haven't really seen this kind of thing come out of those groups. So it's really it's cool to see that come out of Howl. And I feel like also, John, the way you guys are doing it, I don't see a lot of infighting when it comes to the way you guys roll out issues, which if you're not a hunter or fisherman, that might sound odd. But if you are, you know that everything becomes a top like an internal debate. And
Hmm.
then we waste a lot of our time and energy just internally
Sure.
debating something for maybe our own personal goals within that issue or whatever. But you guys have done a really good job of not doing that. Do you have any insight into why that is? Is it a function of the system?
Yeah.
Is it a function of like the brand you guys have tried to build around it, or what are your thoughts?
Um, well, it's a lot of different things, honestly. But specifically, like on each action, one of the things that we do is we spend a lot of time researching and looking at it from as many angles as we possibly can. And the goal is like what we were talking about earlier, conservation. You look at things holistically. Looking at the bigger picture is the most important thing.
Right.
We've had a couple of things where we've had people on both
Yeah,
sides of the fence,
sure.
like like right now, for instance, this wolf thing in Wyoming, where uh, a guy, uh, I hate to use the word hunter, but because I don't consider him a hunter, doing this, um, you know, basically tortured a a wolf. I don't know if I'll tell the whole story
Sure.
basically real quick. I guess allegedly well, not allegedly because there's video, but he ran down a wolf with a snowmobile, incapacitated it, taped its mouth up, took it to a bar in town, paraded around, took pictures with it, kissed it. I mean, did all these things that
Yeah, yeah.
nobody should be happy about. And then that got out. Um, People were sharing the videos and pictures and so on and so forth, as how things happen nowadays in life.
Right.
And so it was already again, I don't like to use the word narrative, but the narrative of it was being pumped out there by the anti-hunters, okay,
Yeah.
and by some non-hunting. It was just, oh, this is a great media story, let's put it out there.
Yeah, yeah, of
It's
course.
the
It's
whole
it's gonna yeah, it's like
rubbernecking.
it's clickbait. It's natural
Sure.
clickbait. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no good crisis goes unwasted.
Sure.
So i- a lot of that was, and it was getting out. So now the only story that was out there was that side of anti-hunting and or non-hunting. So this wasn't good for hunting, period.
Right.
Because what anti-hunters do is, and what they have been doing, has been painting this picture of what the hunter is. They want everybody in between to view hunting as Elmer Fudd, you know, careless hillbilly that doesn't love nature, willy nilly shooting shit out of the back of trucks, drinking beer. They
Right.
want all these negative um, images out there. And so when something happens like this, oh my God, they jump on it. Just like they're like, ooh,
Right.
yeah, we got
Sure.
them now. And it comes on the heels of, this thing in Colorado with the mountain lion thing and um, all these other things. So it's like playing perfectly. I almost, when I heard it, I was like, somebody in the anti-hunting
Yeah, it's
group,
like a setup or something.
yeah, paid
Yeah.
paid this guy.
Yeah.
Hey, do this stupid action. We're gonna give you $100,000 or $1,000,000 or whatever the
Yeah,
case may
yeah.
be. And that's why it was, because like why
Yeah, it's
would you do something
I'm
like
not real.
this
I'm not
as a hunter?
super. I've kind of honestly like avoided like reading the details of it.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen it a bunch, but
Hmm.
my general take on it is it's really an odd deal, John. It's almost like from what I've read about the guy and what he did, it's almost like something you would see out of a 13 or 14-year-old kid that's trying to figure out right and wrong in life. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Not an adult. Um,
Right.
so it's really it's confusing to me in that regard. Even outside of the hunting topic,
Right.
it's really why it's kind of a and I try to step back a little bit of it and realize that the media is controlling the narrative too.
Sure.
So I think that's purposely why I've like been like, okay, because this guy's life is going to be changed
Sure.
forever.
It
You know
is.
what I
It is.
mean?
It's already been changed too.
Yeah, and I guess in my mind, it's very important that that's not for that is part of the story being distorted. I've just tried to be cautious in my own mind about that
Sure.
because I don't want somebody's life to be ruined. But if the guy has done all this stuff, it's borderline like psychopathic. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I'm totally with you. I could totally see why it was very apparent to the hunting world, like, oh, okay, there needs to be another discussion about this, and
Right.
yeah, and that's where you guys kind of got
Well,
in.
we looked at it and we were like, well, man, we know there's going to be people on both sides of this fence. And, you know, a lot of the people that are talking about, oh, we shouldn't be talking about it, we shouldn't be bringing, national attention to it, they're not coming from a bad place.
Yeah,
They're not like, oh, let's hide this. They're thinking about this guy and his family. Like, one of the things we didn't list his name. We didn't use any of the images that were being
sure.
that are being exchanged online right now of him with the wolf and so on and so forth, or the snowmobile or any of that. Um, we were very careful as to how we wanted to present that, because again, the idea is not to hurt this guy, but we
Yeah,
need to condemn those actions.
sure.
And if hunters and anglers are not the ones speaking out about this atrocity, then the only voices that are being heard from the decision makers on this, because there's going to be some kind of policy change, there's going to be something to prevent this from happening,
Right.
is going to be from the squeaky wheels of the anti-hunting groups. So do we want the anti-hunting groups, dictating policy, or
Right.
do we want sound management practices put in place by the hunters?
Yeah.
So when we can, from a moral stand ground, we wanted to, say, hey, we're opposed to this, but also from the idea of looking at the bigger picture, we need to be the ones directing this change. We
Yeah.
need to show the public that hunters are not only care about wildlife, we do things with purpose. We do things with the idea that it's going to be a better place. We look at the big picture.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
just,
Yep.
you know. So, um, that's why Hal definitely jumped on board, and now we've been able to facilitate a coalition with boots on the ground people in Wyoming to come up with. We're going to have a meeting of the minds and come up with policy that makes sense to prevent these things, but that doesn't affect hunting. Because that
Right.
was the other thing. Is, oh, it's a slippery slope. You're going to lose trapping. You're going to lose this. You're going to lose that. Blah 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 blah. And believe me, those thoughts came to our head. We thought about those things. This is the things that we think about on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But the overall big picture of hunting will be harmed if you don't eliminate the opportunity, I guess, to do stuff like this.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. No,
or I mean,
I
people are going to do what people do, but at least if there's laws in place and punishment, like this guy, he got a $250 fine, and that's what everybody was outraged about.
yeah.
Like, if he would have, lost his hunting privileges, went to jail, and all, it would have been just like, okay, there's another asshole that,
Yeah,
got what he
just
deserved.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
it was basically it's very apparent that what he did was wrong, and then
mhm.
a $250 fine just seems so mild.
Yeah, it was
I mean, everybody's
okay.
gonna be like, oh, like yeah, um, So I
Two tanks
totally
of gas.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I told, it's not going to deter somebody
Right.
who has maybe that same mindset. Um, it's such a I mean, well, I don't want to really get too into it because it's such a weird. The way that I viewed it, it's almost like the guy had to be so hateful towards that. It's a really
Hmm.
weird like
Yeah.
psychology component of it. I don't know anybody that. I mean, I know a lot of guys that wolf hunt and trap wolves, and I know a lot of people that really dislike wolves because they have to deal
Hmm.
with them in their daily life, livestock
Hmm.
guys or whatever.
Sure.
None of them would do what that guy did.
Listen,
You know what I mean?
I, yeah, I'm with you 100%. Even the use of a snowmobile, like to not necessarily run it over, but to run it down so you can get an opportunity to shoot. As long as you're dispatching the wolf, like right then and there, like
Yeah, just kill it.
okay,
Yeah, done deal. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
like
Yep.
no, but instead you tortured the poor thing and you paraded it around, and it was
Yeah,
just
it's just so
it's just a
yeah, it's a
bad
weird
thing
yeah,
all
it's a
around.
weird thing for sure. But back to the Howl involvement, I think you bring up a
Hmm.
really good point, John. Like, if you look at wildlife policy over the years, events like this, like individual events, they become like little chunks of cancer that really
Hmm.
quickly change policy. In I think if I was new to this world, I think I wouldn't even realize that that happens. But I know lots of instances. There's several instances in British Columbia that you can look back at, like the grizzly bear bans, and a lot
Hmm.
of them are related to like one situation, right?
Yep.
One skinned grizzly bear on a coast or something like that. That a boat, that a tour boat saw or whatever. Like those things, they manifest really quickly into policy changes. And like this
Yeah.
thing, I guess it's like the extreme case, but if you don't get involved as hunters, this could be the precipice for, basically halting, maybe halting all wolf hunting, or it could be a different policy change that is more like, no, we just need to stop this type of, action. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you on that.
Well, I mean, again, like I said, it couldn't happen. And not that any time would be a good time, but it couldn't happen at a worse time. Like they
Yeah, yeah.
were right now in the process of trying to delist grizzlies in Wyoming.
Right.
If you don't think that this is going to put a giant halt on that,
Right.
you're sadly mistaken. Like,
Yeah, or you just don't
you know,
understand how like how the system works, right? It's all
mhm,
about all of a sudden a bunch of people that really they're thinking about other things in life. They see this and now they're motivated to be like, they're motivated to be a little more anti-hunting is basically what
mhm,
it is. It like
100%.
and that's just how these systems work. And I've noticed, that people that you're fighting with politically on these topics, and they use it strategically, right? Like they'll use that
100%.
momentum strategically, and I think that. I think to some extent that even Howell's a part of this. We're starting to use the inverse, strategically, that I actually think, help. It makes sense. Like, even little things. I'd love to hear your opinion on this, John. Like the wolf deal in Colorado.
Hmm.
And I know me and you have even discussed it. Like it's a done deal. Like it's happening. It's old news. But do you think there's any value in just like I saw some articles today about some of the transplanted wolves killing
Hmm.
killing domestic livestock or whatever. Is it Do you view is there any value in that for those news stories that come out? And hunters repost them all over Instagram. Do you think it's helpful for hunters to do that just so, a broader audience sees like, oh, this is one of the issues we were talking about. So maybe in the
Hmm.
future on topics, you know, maybe there's some more validity to our argument. Do you have an
Sure.
opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, education is key, right? Um, if we, and I say we, I mean hunters, did a better job of educating when that bill was around, when
Right.
it was being voted on, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Right.
So there's still some things like we still don't have a management plan in place. So these conversations and these things that are showing people the effects of having wolves on the landscape um, are super important because then when comes time to put this plan in place or when this plan gets hashed out, you get a more educated, um, you know, group of voters that are going to vote on the subject. Um, specifically the wolf thing, like, well, also people from other states actually can look at it too as a cautionary tale. Okay,
Right.
well, Colorado went into this very misinformed, and now look what they're dealing with. Maybe we shouldn't entertain
Yeah. Yeah.
putting wolves back, or if we're going to put wolves back, let's go into it with this whole idea that once they reach a certain limit of wolves or get to carrying capacity or whatever, or objective, this is this is how we plan to manage them, or this
Right.
is how we see the system working. Because like in Colorado, and part of the reason why they went for it in Colorado is the political and climate was ripe
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Sure.
this, right? But you look at things like they only, when I say they, I mean, or we, hunters and outdoorsmen and cattlemen and the people that are very upset about the wolves being introduced only lost that by less than 1%.
Yeah.
I think it was like 33,000 people was the deciding factor.
Yeah.
Um, but hunters we're always our own worst enemy. Like we don't want to get involved in stuff. We don't. I was just having this conversation with my cousin Anthony yesterday. I'm like, it was completely different. It wasn't hunting related. He's a realtor and he had some policy that passed, but he doesn't vote. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, I mean, you can't be in the parking lot of the stadium, bitching about the refs. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not in the game. You're not there. You're not even doing anything. You're not participating. Like
Right.
you need to participate. And there's something like, I want to say like, I don't know. I'm gonna butcher the number, so I'm just gonna throw an arbitrary number out there, but it's like 60,000 registered or 60,000 hunters in the state of Colorado that did not vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are you going to bitch about wolves and complain about something that you could have prevented? You could have
Yeah.
won that vote.
It's
Like,
yeah. I mean, I guess if that's one silver lining of the whole thing, John, is I feel like it was a wake up call to hunters because I think a lot of people look back on the topic. Well, I can specifically speak for myself. I was
hmm
I was inactive in the fight. I was in the thick of outfitting at the time. Like,
Hmm.
it's not an excuse. But I was,
It's a reason.
I
I
was
get it.
being an entrepreneur. Like, I had a thousand other things, but the primary reason I was not involved in it was because I felt like it was a lost cause.
Hmm.
I had either picked up a narrative somewhere or developed it in my mind. And I actually think that it's partly just having a lot of history in Colorado. My dad was a cattle rancher there. He was an outfitter there. I
Hmm.
didn't spend all my life there, but I grew up a big chunk of my life there. And then I've spent a lot of time, as working within the hunting world. I saw a huge change in the politics there. And it almost created a narrative in my mind that it was a lost cause because the left was taking over Colorado. And it was like,
Hmm.
to me, I thought the wolf thing was going to pass by 70%. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
didn't, and so it was a wake up call to me because I put no effort in fighting that personally. And
Hmm.
at the time, I mean, in the position I was in, that sort of thing, I probably, I had a lot of personal incentive as an outfitter at the time. I
Sure.
like, it wasn't even on my brain to sell my business or anything like that. That wasn't even something I was thinking about. So I had like a personal incentive, with the wolf deal, but also I was like highly involved in all the different organizations there. I was living there. Like, I could have been more involved and could have made a little change myself. I for sure would have, and I didn't. And so for me, it's a little bit of a silver lining that I think it woke up a lot of people like me. And
Hmm.
I'm seeing, through your organization, through Dan's organization, it appears to me way more of an organized
Sure.
concern from residents in Colorado, but also non-resident hunters all over the country. On the stuff that's coming down the pipeline in Colorado. Am
Hmm.
I am I am I making that up? Is social media just keeping me in this funnel, or
No,
it just seems like it,
you're right.
or do you see the same thing?
There is a wave of awareness out there. I think people are are starting to realize you can't have this defeatist
Right.
um, mentality that you had. Like, I mean, that we've all had it. I've
Sure.
done it myself. Oh, there's no way we're gonna win this. So why even bother putting forth the effort? Well,
Right.
I think more and more people, and the more we're out there and we're having these conversations on on podcasts, and it's being consumed, and there's more people that want to actively be involved, that's changing. And
Right.
the hope is, so like, Howl For Wildlife as an organization, we've been able to move mountains within what we're talking about right now with thousands of people.
Right.
There's 16 million hunters in the United States.
Right.
If we had millions of people with the same mentality and willingness to be involved that we have from the thousands of people and millions of people, I think we would be hard pressed to lose anything involved in hunting
Yeah.
and
And
fishing.
the thing that I'm realizing, John, like, as I really like pay more attention to the industry, is it's totally possible. There's no excuses. Like, you go, like, me and you were chatting at the Hunt Expo. So I know you were at the Utah Hunt Expo. There are companies there that
Hmm.
sell primarily Western hunting camo that are doing
Hmm.
50, 60, 70, $80 million of revenue a year. Right.
Hmm.
So this is
Yep.
like, it's not like I think we've, as hunters, we've always felt like a very small, to some extent, maybe unpowerful group on some of these topics. But the proof
We're
is in,
super powerful.
yeah, the proof is in the numbers. Like, people are willing to spend a ton of money on their gear, on hunts, on
Hmm.
this very important part of their life. And so I think this part of it, the basically, like, what I call like the lobbying part of it,
Hmm.
it just has to become more important for everybody.
100%. So, you know, hunters and anglers typically have the mindset like, you don't impose your lifestyle on me, I won't impose my lifestyle on you. And, you know, it's a great way to live, I think.
Sure.
But it's that same mentality that has taken us all out of the fight, and that same like, it's somebody else's thing,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. So we are by far the biggest stakeholder at the conservation table. So if you think about conservation, wildlife management, and all this stuff as a table, okay, it's a
Mm-hmm.
big round table. We occupy the largest section of that table,
Right.
and we do so because, and the reason why hunting's been around for as long as it has been, and has worked so well, is because we are the biggest stakeholder, because we put money into conservation, because it's a user pay system. Okay, that's why when an anti-hunter, you could have 15 anti-hunters bitching about something and one hunter sticking up for it. That one hunter holds as much weight as those 15.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say take that for granted, because it goes away. Obviously, things go away very easily, um, especially if there's any hunters on. I was just telling this to Charles the other day. I said, anytime there's policy that there's hunters on both sides of the fence, the decision makers always go with anti-hunting.
Yeah.
So think about that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And in the
think
in
about
the
that.
there's probably reasons for that, right? It's just more palatable to the,
Hmm.
to our culture or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So going back to this mentality, you know, wildlife is held in public trust, and the way we're set up, you can living in Colorado. Actually, now you live in where in Caribbean are you?
Yeah.
I don't even. I know
Yeah,
you're in the
yeah.
Caribbean. I
So
didn't.
I split my time between Puerto Rico and Oregon
Puerto
nowadays,
Rico.
and then I'm
That's what it was.
still I'm
Puerto
still
Rico. I
spending
knew that.
still spending some time in Colorado too during the guidance season.
So, but it's the same reason why you can go from Colorado to Oregon and go hunt bears there, and go to Washington next week to go hunt bears there. Like we can go. I could go to Kentucky to hunt whitetail. I can
Sure.
go to New York and hunt turkey, whatever. Um, we are all we're all interconnected. That the North American model, the system that works here, we're all interconnected. And one of the biggest things that we've had a problem with is getting this realization, like, why should I, living in Arizona, I'm a mule deer hunter here, okay? That's my thing. I mule deer hunt.
Right.
Why should I care about a guy who hunts bear in Oregon? Like, why does that affect me? I'm
Right.
never going to go to Oregon. I'm not even going to go there to hunt mule deer,
Right.
even though I might want to, whatever. I'm never going to go there. So why should I care? Well, there's so many like things that interconnect us that we don't realize. It's seemingly unimportant to us. Like, I feel bad for that guy, but it's not my fight.
Right.
But it is your fight. And that's the biggest thing that I think, well, it's kind of the torch that I've picked up personally. Um, within Howl For Wildlife, like we all have our kind of like our things. We all we all do everything,
Sure.
but within Howl For Wildlife, that's kind of been the thing that I've done most about, is talk about this. Is, well, I'm gonna give you a great. Let's go through this. I'll give you quick examples of how we're interconnected. So, you're a bear hunter in Oregon. I'm a mule deer hunter here in Arizona. You lose bear hunting in Oregon. How does that affect me? Well, just like I only hunt deer here, there's a certain niche of hunters in Oregon that only hunt bears.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we've lost those bear hunters. You don't bear hunt anymore, so now you've taken up snowmobiling or
Right. Sure.
snowboarding or mountain biking, whatever the case may be. You don't hunt bears anymore. That's not your thing.
Yeah.
So now we just lost a portion of your voice, that voice at the conservation table that I was talking about. So we just physically lost you.
Right.
Okay. So we don't have you talking about hunting and fishing anymore at the conservation table. We also lost the money that was coming in, that people bought bear tags in Oregon.
Yeah.
Okay. That shrunk the voice. You lose money coming in for Oregon to do their overall mission, which was taking whatever money comes in from different avenues and putting it back into the landscape somehow, some way, shape, or form to create opportunity. Okay. So now there's a little bit less money for Oregon to put into deer hunting, to put into elk hunting. So what happens? Now that opportunity goes down.
Right.
Again, the voice gets shrunk because now there's less people participating in hunting in general. Also, more bears means less deer and elk. Less deer and elk means less tags. Less tags means less opportunity.
Right.
Again, shrinks the voice.
Sure.
So it's this like steamrolling thing. It's this like death by a million cuts,
Right.
and realizing it. Now, you take it federally. You you bought guns and ammo and bows and arrows and all that stuff to go bear hunting. That was your thing. So you were buying into Pittman Robertson, and most people don't know what Pittman Robertson is, but if Pittman Robertson is a giant pie, federal pie, and every time you buy sporting equipment, to not all sporting equipment, but certain sporting equipment, it pays into this pie. There's an excise tax that associated with it. So if that pie is a $1.5 billion and we lost bear hunting in Oregon, now that pie just got, these are arbitrary numbers. That pie
Right.
just got shrunk down to 1.4 billion. Okay. So now when it comes time to divvy up the pie, instead of a $1.5 billion pie, you got a $1.4 billion pie. So now me in Arizona, I just got less money from this pie.
Right.
My piece just got smaller. So it directly affected me here.
Yeah.
So like, and we're all in this together and we don't understand that.
Right. Yeah. And
The anti-hunters understand this. They know it very well.
yeah.
And they're always chopping at ways to have a bigger seat at the conservation table. And they do
Yeah.
that by proposing things that would, like I get leery about, like, I don't know if you know what RAWA is. I'm just using that as an example. So RAWA is a restoration wetlands. I can't remember what it stands for now, but it's an act that would tax the general public to put money back into conservation
Yep.
efforts to support these lands. And at face value, everybody's like, "Oh, that's great." Even hunters, like I was like, "Oh, cool, man, it's more money coming in,
Yep.
to do." But then you think about it, you're like, "Wait a second, that actually shrinks the voice of the sportsman, of
Right.
the outdoorsman, because it's a user pay system. Right now, what we hang our hats on is the fact that, yeah, you want to go see elk in the Rockies, you want to go mountain biking down that trail. We did that.
Yeah.
We provided that.
Yeah.
Hunting
And our
provided that.
opposition knows that that's a very powerful lever that we have. At
Right.
least I think that. I think that they're very they understand that, and that's one of their targets. Don't you think,
Mhm.
John? Like they really
Oh,
want it. That's like
I know it for sure. I know it.
yeah.
100%. I we've been able to, one of the things, the reason why Hal's been successful is we've kind of studied what they do.
Yeah.
You know, um, we've taken pages out of their book
Sure.
and used it against them. Um, you mentioned about the millions and millions of dollars at the Hunt Expo. Like, that's another reason why we're still around. I call it greed. Money makes the world go round. And they
Sure.
know that there's $1 billion of industry attached, to hunting and fishing. And if an anti-hunter waved his wand right now and magically made hunting and fishing go away, it would literally collapse the United States. Like, that's how much stuff is interconnected with our way of life
Yeah.
from an industry standpoint. Also the wildlife would suffer because anti-hunting, whether they realize it or not, because I think most of these people are thinking they're coming from a good place. Same thing with
Yeah. Yeah.
veganism and vegetarianism and all that stuff. They feel like they're coming from a good place, but when they look at the grand picture, it's not. You know,
Yeah,
um,
it's a different perspective, and I think that's worth noting, John. Like my experience with people that are our opposition is in general, they're not they're not like low IQ
mhm.
people who who don't believe they're not, most of them, at least the ones that are providing a lot of the money and support, they think they're doing something good for the
Mhm.
world, and they're not
Right.
dumb. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just that I think, they've come to a different opinion than us because they have 40 or 50 years of life that has exposed them to a totally different world.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I think it's interesting. But before we move on, John, I want to hear your opinion on this, because one thing I've noticed is that within this idea of a hunter in Oregon needs to be concerned about what's going on in Arizona and vice versa. A lot of these organizations that we combat, they're momentum based, from what I've
Mhm.
seen. So there's actually like their ability to raise money for future things they're going to fight us on, their ability to just grow their organizations. It's real dependent on them winning issues in another state. Like if they
Mhm.
win the bear thing in Oregon, all of a sudden they're more likely to take on lions again in Arizona because they can keep like the battleship going. So I think there's also like a strategic point to this that, hey, you know,
Yeah.
does that make sense? Am I off base, or does that make sense?
No, you're not completely off base. What you're
Well, that's
saying
good.
is right. Um, Everything you said is true except for the fact of winning. They don't have to win. They
Okay.
don't have to win at all. The fight is what generates their funding.
Feeds the beast. I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
Could
So,
you explain? Can you explain that a little bit?
in all actuality, like I don't even think it, I'm a kid from Brooklyn, so like I have this really like skeptical view of things.
Yeah.
I honestly don't feel like the anti-hunting establishment wants to 100% win. They just want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
win to an extent. And I know, you know why? Because it's such a giant industry for them. And I'm not talking about the members. I'm not talking about the people that are contributing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
You're
talking
not.
about the
Yeah.
people,
I
the
think
puppet masters that are actually
Dude,
working
I think
behind the
this is
scenes.
I think this is really important, John. I want you, because I know where you're going on this, but before you explain to it, I want to make sure that people understand what you're saying, and it kind of reflects on my comments just a minute ago. Like the people who are funding it tend to
Hmm.
be, I would call
Yeah,
them like bleeding hearts, good
sure.
intentioned people. But
Hmm.
there's another component of it, and explain that to us.
Yeah. So to me, I'm like, if, if, well, if hunting and fishing went away, then, then why is there a need for them to raise money?
Right.
Yeah, okay, they got the other animal welfare issues, like, big industry using, animals for testing, and, there's environmental stuff where oil oil companies or coal or, resource development companies that are eating up resources that would normally be utilized by wildlife. Um, there's that.
Right.
So it'd be hard pressed for it all to go away. But at the same time, I think it almost benefits them to have a boogeyman.
Right.
Um, so they don't want to completely vanquish the boogeyman. They don't
Right.
want to completely get rid of
Yeah,
it.
you know what I noticed, John, that I think depicts this point, and this is nothing against people, viewers who are attorneys or lawyers. But if you look at who we fight within these organizations,
Hmm.
our opposition is all attorneys. Like they're
Yeah,
all lawyers. And then if you
yeah.
look at our
There's a
organizations, you look at Howl, you look at other hunting organizations, there's like one attorney for the
there's a reason
400
for that.
other people that live there. Yeah, explain the reason.
So for those who want to go down a rabbit hole on this, I did a really good podcast with Gabriella Hoffman on my own, and it kind of goes into this in depth.
Okay.
I am definitely not the expert on this situation, but basically, there is stuff in place that allows. It's kind of like it's the same stuff that kind of it's attached to the Homestead Act, um, where they get money to bring about lawsuits against the government.
Yeah.
And the perpetual lawsuits is what generates a lot of their funding.
Right.
And so it behooves them not to continue to litigate against anything, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's kind
like
of it's really big business, and it's really hard for me to kind of like get into all of it because again, like I'm not
yeah,
the expert on it for
it's
sure.
complicated, but the gist of it, John, and tell me if I'm wrong, is there's a
Hmm.
business model here for people in that world, regardless if they're anti-hunting or not. There's a
Hmm.
business model for them to create billable hours.
Sure,
And,
100%.
and that's in that, like, for sure, if you look at the, not even within the hunting context, a lot of like the animal rights movement, there's a lot of this going on. Like they
Sure.
have been able to create a system of just creating an insane amount of work for their law firms.
Hmm.
And it's really it does bring up a question. I think it the reason I bring it up is because people could say, well, yeah, that's just how lobbying works, that's how policy changes
Hmm.
work. Well, that's not what I don't see that in any hunting organizations. You
Well,
know what I
because
mean?
here's the thing, that system only works when you're suing,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
defending.
yeah,
We're not defending.
right.
So
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
always on the defense. We're always playing defense. We're
yeah,
always
yeah.
trying to protect something. We're always trying. Now, is there situations where we could go on the offense and utilize that same model? Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely. Um, but the problem is they know the you know the best defense for them is the best offense. So they continue up this offense, which always keeps us on the defense.
right.
And so, I try to put this into perspective for people. So hunters want to do what hunters want to do, right? We want to hunt, we want to fish, we put in, countless hours trying to figure out where to hang a tree stand,
Yeah, yeah,
what gear to buy, whatever. This is our main focus. Saving hunting is, secondary, tertiary. It could be, some of us not even on the
right.
list, right? And anti-hunting, their number one focus is to get rid of you.
Yeah,
That's what they do.
that's their day job.
That's their day job.
Yep.
That's what they want to do. We're not doing this as a day job where we
Right.
want to hunt. So saving hunting is not ever going to be first and foremost. And you kind of touched on this earlier about the other orgs and stuff. The mission of those other orgs was never, hey, to save hunting. It's to put more animals back on the mountain.
Yeah.
Let's develop habitat. Let's do this. Let's do that. And back in the day, that was enough because one, I think society wasn't as stupid as we are today.
Yeah,
But
or there's just more people. There's more people
yeah,
that were rational
yeah,
about it. Like, yeah, that makes
right.
sense. You
Okay,
know?
like, these guys are doing good. Okay,
Yeah,
let
yeah,
them keep
yeah.
continue
Leave
to
them
do good,
alone. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, but now the way things are, you know, it's it's who can make the most racket, who can make the most noise, and and try to get what we want done, right?
right,
And as far as hunters, we don't do that. Like we're not making a racket about anything. We just want to keep what we have.
right,
Um, I would love to be able to get to a point that we're making a racket to get things back
right.
that we have lost. The lion huntings, the bear huntings,
Yeah,
whatever. Hunting on Sunday or having hunting and fishing put in place as a constitutional right for each state.
right.
You know, things like that. Those are a lot of things we could go on the offense about, but we can't go on the offense until we're done fighting all the defensive things that we're fighting.
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
Um, in another huge difference too, like if you think about the anti-hunting establishment, they're not offering their member base or their donating population. They're not offering them anything. They're just saying let me put Sarah McLachlan on TV and sing in,
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
arms of an angel and give me $20 a month because you can save X amount of kittens.
right.
We we have to incentivize our the hunting public. Like we need to give away a hunt. Oh, hey,
Right.
this is going to go to conservation. Come buy a $100 raffle ticket. Like none of that goes on there. They're not saying, hey, um, come win this bird watching trip of a lifetime and give us $1,000 per ticket. Like it doesn't. The model of what we have in place is
Yeah, it's not as it's
no
not as sustainable, and it's for
right,
sure it's not gonna fund what you're talking about, John. It's not gonna fund 18 lawyers who make 7 or 800 grand a year to fight their
right,
fight. And
yep,
I think that model is distasteful to hunters in general. Like we just view that world, I'm speaking just like as a broad category. Like we view it as like just a dead weight loss, right? Like, man, I'd rather give money to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. They're buying habitat, they're improving habitat, they're
sure,
putting more elk out there. Like I'd rather spend money on that. I don't want to fund, 5 lawyers to fight the fight. But
hmm
I think we have to open our eyes to the fact that that's the only future for this, John. And
yeah,
not to rant about it, but I think for me personally, I think a lot of the reason I, maybe 5 years ago wouldn't have had that mentality, and I'd love to hear, if your mentality has changed on this. But, 5 years ago, I didn't really view the idea of no hunting opportunity or hunting being outlawed. I don't really think I viewed
yeah,
that as a possibility. Now
yeah,
I do, John, and I hate to say that. Like, maybe not in my lifetime, but surely, as I get old and in my kids' lifetime, it's a real possibility. And man, if you look up some of the characters who are funding these little incremental things, the
hmm
lion deal, all these other things, if you actually spend a little time, like go and watch them give a TED talk or watch them,
hmm
whatever, it's like, oh yeah, no, this is about no hunting.
hmm hundred
Like,
percent.
and that
The
has,
the
you know,
the
that
writing is on the wall about that for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, like, I know it
Yeah,
you're probably listening to this like, "Yeah, no shit, Cliff," and I'm sure viewers
no,
are
no,
too, but it took
but
me a
there's a lot
minute,
of people that don't
you
have
know
that. A lot of people
go
don't have
ahead.
that realization. They don't have that understanding that it really could go away as we know it. You know,
Yeah,
I don't. I mean, it's gonna be like I said because there's a lot attached to it, industry attached to it, and stuff like that. So eventually, people are gonna greed's gonna take over. And they're gonna be like, "Whoa, pump the brakes here. You're trying to wreck a billions of dollar industry and something that is
right,
not gonna benefit the country." But again, you can't hang your hat on that and say um, we're not going to lose everything because you just saw this in Oregon. Matter of fact, there was that IP3, I think it was, where like they were trying to get rid of all animal husbandry. Like you couldn't
yeah.
clip your dog's toenails. Like
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people
that's
who
being proposed right
yeah,
now. Like,
beyond hunting,
okay,
they don't even want you
yeah,
eating meat, period, you
right.
know?
Yeah, no fishing, no not like nothing. Nothing that
Yeah,
has to do with an animal. So if they're and that's so outrageous and people, it's laughable, but the problem is they're betting on that fact. They're betting on the fact that there's going to be so many people thinking like, "Oh, this is so outrageous, it's never going to happen."
right,
And they're going to catch people off guard and there's going to be enough people that say, "Hey, oh," and then next thing you know, it's going to be on the damn ballot.
right.
And then you got a different fight to deal with. You know, um I was going to say something a little bit earlier, and I don't remember exactly what it is that you said that kind of sparked me to think about this. But we were talking about, how the anti-hunters fundraise and all that stuff. I really feel like we need to have a national fundraising um, campaign where everybody on a monthly or yearly basis has got to be paying into a war chest.
Yeah.
And that war chest has to, because that's what the anti-hunters have. That's
Sure.
why they're so well funded. And like, so Colorado, we take that for instance. I don't know what the exact number is, but they have something like $20 million to have that fight.
Right.
And we are busting our butts to get to 5 million.
Yeah.
Like just busting our butts. If we continually fundraise instead of playing the hurry up and catch up game or the reactive game that we play, we have this like war chest set in place. We would be so much more well equipped. And
Yeah.
the other thing that like we need to do, so we started talking about what Howl For Wildlife does. We're launching a program called Hunting is Human. And I think this is what takes hunting and puts hunting in a place that doesn't make it untouchable, but it's certainly going to fortify our defenses, is speaking to the non-hunting public and educating them. Because for the last, since before you and I were kids, Bambi and on, the anti-hunter's been playing this long game to
Sure.
educate the non-hunting public on their perception and their narrative of what, and their propaganda of what hunting is.
Right.
Okay. Which we kind of talked about it a little bit with this guy in Wyoming. That fed right into what they were so excited about it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
fed right into what they say, because now all the rest of you hunters are just like that guy in Wyoming.
Yeah.
So the important thing is to talk to people who don't understand hunting and give them a positive understanding of the human values, the camaraderie, the meals, what goes into hunting, why hunting does well, conservation, North American model of wildlife model, and all these good things that hunting that we take for granted that hunting is, and giving that to the non-hunting public, educating them. Now we no longer will have, because they're the biggest voting population. That's 90%.
Right.
We're 5% on one side, 5% on the other, and 90% in the middle.
Right.
That 90% in the middle needs to know the truth.
Right.
Because you know how the world works today. Like, we talked about clickbait and all this stuff. Like, their first exposures of what something is what they're going to run with.
Right.
They're not going to go down a deep dive.
Right.
To find out about, is this really true? Of what I'm seeing is really true. I mean, you're getting a little bit more of that. You're getting some people, because of things that happen in mainstream politics, that people are kind of like looking a little bit past the headlines now.
Right.
But it's not going to happen in the hunting world. So when a ban to, a thing comes to ban bear hunting in Oregon pops up, the first people that expose the hunting population to what they want is what those people are going to do.
Right.
So it's important for us to have these conversations, important for us to, one, educate ourselves. Like, let's educate ourselves and become the best stewards of hunting we possibly can, so that we can, when we have an interaction with non-hunting people, we can explain ourselves to them in a way that they're going to be like, oh, okay, cool. I know Cliff. He's a cool guy, man. He talked about this. And this bill I'm seeing is seemingly bullshit, and I'm going to vote.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, dude, I think it's a great idea, John. I love the name of it. What hunting is human. That's the overall. Yeah. I love it, dude. The anecdote I would give you, and I think that people in the US don't realize this, but you mentioned it, like, there's such a long history of like slow kind of anti-hunting sentiment in the US that I don't think people really realize is actually somewhat unique. Because I've actually noticed, I mean, years ago, I spent some time in Asia. I've spent some time around people who this whole hunting thing is just not on their radar. Like, it's not even a
Right.
topic, right? They're living in, metropolis. All they've ever seen is concrete their whole life. But
Right.
what's interesting is if you have a conversation with them about hunting, their natural tendency is to be rational about it, to be like,
Hmm.
"Oh yeah, that makes sense." Like
Most people are.
I've talked to a lot of people in Thailand. We get into a conversation. I tell them that this is what I do for a living or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, that makes sense." You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like they have a rational, and like I've
Yeah.
realized over time, there's a lot of cultures on this earth that they haven't been exposed to like this long, kind of drawn out like propaganda around hunting, and so
Hmm.
their natural tendency in the conversation is to be like, yeah, hell yeah, that makes sense. Doesn't
Yeah.
sound like you're doing anything wrong. Well, humans been
Yeah.
doing that for a long time. It's
Well,
really,
I mean,
it's kind of interesting.
it's actually a new idea that humans don't hunt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The last what 150 years maybe.
Right,
It's just
right.
it's a blip in time, like
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, the
that
vast,
we
vast
haven't.
majority of our existence on Earth, it's not just been a
Yeah.
thing, it's been the thing. You know what
Right.
I mean? Um,
Yep.
John, I've had a awesome time talking to you, dude. I think we've hit on a lot of interesting topics, but
Hmm.
let people know where they can follow you and where they can get more information on how.
Sure. Well, me personally, it's just John Stallone, everything. So Instagram, whatever, YouTube's, etc. Um, my my podcast is Days in the Wild, but as far as Howl for Wildlife is concerned, it's just howlforwildlife.org or howl_org on Instagram. Um, we've unlike any other organization, we created a free membership for you guys to dip your toes in. And then, once you've seen the benefits of being a member or what we do, then you can financially be committed. Um, we didn't want to tell people, hey, you can't get involved. We don't want you to get involved if you don't want to pay us $30 a year.
Right.
Um, so that's a neat thing. So go to Howl for Wildlife. You could sign up for the free membership. You can kind of dip your toes and get involved in things and look at some of the actions. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like just those two places. We have a Facebook, but it's you know we don't do a lot on there. Most of the stuff is done on the Instagram and through the website.
Awesome.
So
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on. We'll have to do it
yeah,
again.
likewise. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Good deal.
Appreciate it. And definitely, if you can make it happen, let me know. I'll get it set up for you. To go bow fishing.
Oh yeah, we'll do it, man.
All right.
I'm the type of guy you don't want to invite unless
Uh,
you want him to actually show up.
I'm the same way. So I wouldn't invite if I didn't want you to.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
If you enjoyed this content, do me a huge favor. Subscribe on whatever platform you consume it on. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever works for you guys. Everything else is on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. Go there and it's going to be very apparent to you that I work my ass off just to not have a real job. All the hunts I guide, all the seminars I put on, all the unique experiences I offer, and the membership site, all the details are there.